I'm Brian Fuller, Editorial Director of EE Times' EE Live section, and we're about to ramp into sort of the last sprint of the second day of our 3 days of live coverage here from the show floor, booth 2749, the DAC 360 booth. So Richard Goering, longtime colleague at EE Times, longtime eminence grisée.
Eminence grisée.
Eminence grisée, as we say, in France. You've been coming to DAC since 1985.
That's right.
Which beats Leibson's claim that he's been coming here since '86, because Leibson says not continuously.
I have not missed a single DAC.
You poor bastard.
Away it goes.
So that's interesting. You haven't missed it. What was the most memorable one?
Well, to tell the truth, I don't retain much of a memory of the old ones. That's part of the secret. The most memorable one, I guess '85 was pretty memorable in that I was new to EDA. I knew nothing about it. EDA didn't exist then. It was all CAE, computer-aided engineering. And I had just started with Computer Design Magazine. I was told to go cover this new area, workstations. And you could get a workstation with schematic capture and gate level simulation for 100 grand or something like that. Right. So that was the environment I walked into. It was Daisy, Mentor, and Valid as the big companies, and just trying to figure out what this is all about. And I, over the years, finally kind of pieced it together.
Really? You figured it out?
Not yet, but I'm working on
it. That's great. What? So flash forward to 2011. What is that? 26 years, 27 DACs, or something like that.
I was hoping you wouldn't do the math, but yes.
All right. So you know, entire generations of children have been conceived, born, and gone off to college.
I know.
Time.
Yes. Don't remind me.
All right. I'll stop with that line of questioning. So what do you see at this 2011? You've been out and about. You covered Gary Smith's panel. You covered the 20 nanometer panel. We had Hunter on. We slotted that in earlier today.
Yeah.
Give me your impressions.
Of this DAC?
Yeah.
It seems a little bigger to me than last year. I don't know if that's true or not, but a little bigger, maybe a little better attended. I think the mood is more upbeat. One of the things Gary Smith said Sunday night is that EDA revenues in 2011 should exceed those slightly of 2007, which I think was the peak. So he declared the Great Recession is over.
Oh,
and I quoted him on that in my blog, so now you have the authoritative word.
Well, that's good.
Yeah. So I think the mood is more upbeat than we've seen the last couple of years.
All right. Well, upbeat is good. We had Gary on after his panel, and he talked about ESL at the tipping point, but he's been talking about ESL now for 10 years.
Well, longer than that. It's had different names.
Right, right. Do you buy his take that that we've moved up the abstraction layer and we're serious, and now it's the era of ESL?
I do. You know, a lot of people are using System C. A lot of people are moving up to transaction level modeling. High level synthesis is starting to catch on. Virtual prototyping or virtual platforms for fast early software execution, those are catching on. Real people are actually using this stuff.
Yeah. And it's do you see any one or two particular vendors who are driving this transition, or is it a group effort?
Well, Cadence, of course, but I'm a little biased.
Yeah.
But it's an industry effort. It takes a whole industry. No one company can do it alone. It's going to take EDA vendors. It's going to take IP vendors. It's going to take services companies. It's going to take foundries. Foundries driving ESL. TSMC has an ESL reference flow.
Right.
That's a tremendous step forward. It's going to take standards.
Yep.
Definitely a broad industry effort. And we really have to show the benefits of moving up in abstraction as well.
Yeah, there's a huge presence on the show floor here of TSMC's right next door. You got a huge Global Foundries booth.
Yeah.
Samsung is here, and speaking of Samsung, you wrote about the 20 nanometer panel at which one of our earlier guests, Anna Hunter, was on. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. This was a Cadence sponsored panel held Monday. We had Anna Hunter from Samsung, we had Simon Cigars from ARM, we had Philippe Magarchak from ST Microelectronics, and Chi-Ping Su from Cadence. And I think the basic message was, yes, 20 nanometers is coming. People want it. There are applications that have volumes high enough to take advantage of it. There will be libraries. There will be tools. However, the questions are, number one, how many people are actually going to use 20 nanometers? And number two, will those libraries and tools allow people to fully take advantage of the benefits of the process, of the density it could potentially offer?
Right.
And Philippe Magreshek had a very interesting statement along those lines. He said, I think the biggest challenge is for us to finally, stop negotiating about design rules and get something out. Because we could spend years optimizing tools and libraries and process.
Right. Yeah, there's always that tipping point. When do we anticipate that the bleeding edge users are going to be there at what time so that we can develop the products and have them
That's right.
ready for prime time?
And the NREs are high because you've got double patterning. The lithography is such that you need extra masks, basically. So those masks have a cost. They impose rather simplistic design rules. They add variability. But to really take advantage of the density of the process, you've got to have it.
So here's speaking of costs and startups, I'm going to extrapolate a little bit on that because there was some discussion at the Hogan McClellan panel yesterday, and also we talked with Gary Smith about this. Do you see a vibrant startup segment in EDA today as you did in the 80s and 90s, or are those days over?
It's a good question. I have not seen many startups in the past year or so. Now, Gary Smith, in his talk, he's talking about a wave of new startups. I don't know who these startups are. I don't know when we'll start seeing them at conferences like DAC, but supposedly there are some. I think we did go through a period of time, a few years during the recession. There wasn't much venture capital money. There were fewer startups than there have been before.
Yeah.
I used to come to DAC to look for startups. When I wrote for E-Times, I'd troll the aisles and look for companies hidden away in sort of the back corner.
Yeah, you don't see a lot of them.
You don't see a lot, right?
Well, I don't know. Maybe we're on a new cycle and something interesting will happen. But anyway, Richard, always fantastic to catch up with you. I know you got a busy schedule, and hopefully we can lure you back to tomorrow's wrap after your panel and after you interview those panelists. But
all right.
Appreciate you taking the time to talk with us.
Well, thank you, Brian.